I'm Rob,
And I'm Nate.
and welcome back to Rob and Nate Record a Podcast, and welcome back to Billy Crystal Month. This week's selection was the 1995 film Forget Paris, which I have probably not seen since 97 or 98. Maybe I saw it once in the early 2000s, when it was on cable TV or something. But it's been quite a while since I've seen this movie, and I forgot a few parts of the movie. In fact, when we decided to forget Paris tonight, I kind of was like, I don't really remember this film, but as soon as it started running, I remembered this film. But yeah, this was your first time seeing this film?
Unless I forgot a previous viewing. I've actually seen bits and pieces of it. This was a ubiquitous like TBS, TNT movie in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I'd seen not very much of it at all, just enough to be kind of aware of it. But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a fun film. It's easily enjoyable. It's pretty consistent pacing, and it delivers comedy throughout.
Yeah, I laughed a lot more than I usually laugh in a movie.
Yeah.
At this movie. And there was something about seeing Billy Crystal at the top of his game. And just, I think, also, current comedies, they don't really seem to have as many laugh-out moments. And there's something about Billy Crystal's sense of humor, which is drier and subtler, which I think is funnier than when they're trying too hard to make you laugh.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just the witticism of it and the delivery is what pushes this over the edge into an actual laugh.
To me, sometimes there seems to be a gap between, like the Martin Shorts, Steve Martins, Mike Myers, that kind of generation of comics to comedians making films now today. And I don't know what it is.
And that's a common complaint that I think you always have, where people are like, well, the films today.
Well, I wouldn't say that in general, but comedies in general, like nowadays. That in particular stands out for me.
Like, if I were to choose blindly a comedy from the 20-teens or comedy from the 90s, it's like you can choose one. I'd easily choose the 90s comedy.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a more reliable laugh for me.
Especially a rom-com. Yeah. Which this is what it's classified as, and yes, this is not the first rom-com Nate and I have watched together.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a good film. Billy Crystal not only stars in it, he also directed it and co-wrote it.
It's a very interestingly structured movie.
Yeah.
Because they're taking, obviously rom-coms have been done, in a sense, to death, and they wanted to make this fresh. And so they have a really interesting kind of structure narrative where there's a number of the friends of the lead couple, which is played by Billy Crystal and Deborah Winger. So Joe Mantegna and Cynthia Stevenson are getting married. And they're at a restaurant in Los Angeles, and they're joined by friends played by Richard Mauser, Julie Kavner, and later John Spencer and Kathy Moriarty. And they are telling Cynthia Stevenson the story of their friends, Mickey and Ellen, Crystal and Winger, about their long, kind of complicated relationship, about how they met in Paris. And there's a funny story about how Billy Crystal was taking his dad, who'd walked out on the family when he was a kid, so was never very close to his dad, but his dad had wished to be buried in France with some war buddies from World War II. So he takes the body there, but the body is lost.
By the airline.
It ends up in Switzerland by mistake.
Like is the ultimate, airline lost luggage gag.
Yeah. And the woman from the airline who's supposed to help him through this is Deborah Winger, and they just click. And the movie chronicles this relationship over the course of about 4 years. And actually, there's a moment, there's a scene, not the Wilt Chamber, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar scene. And they state that this is his farewell tour. And I Googled, so his farewell season was 1989. So the narrative of this 1995 film is roughly 1989 to 1993, 94.
Yeah.
Kind of neat to place it in time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of basketball cameos because Billy Crystal is a basketball
referee.
Coach. This is really a film that
not
could...
Not a coach or a referee.
Yeah, you're right. A referee.
Yeah.
But it's a film... I can't imagine anybody else in this film than Billy Crystal. It's a very specifically crafted for Billy Crystal film.
Well, do you know how he got the idea for this film?
No.
In a moment of art mirroring life, Billy Crystal and his wife Janice were hanging out in a restaurant with friends when they got the idea for the film. And they were there with their friends, and they were hanging out, reliving funny moments, and talking about the realities of marriage after the honeymoon's over. And in this creating this film, Crystal was joined by writers Lowell Gantz, Babilo Mandel, and longtime collaborator Rob Reiner. And based on that idea of just telling those stories in a restaurant with his wife and their friends, that's how they came up with the whole idea of this movie.
It's such a unique, idiocentric, very Billy Crystal specific story.
Yeah. Well, and it flashes back and forth between the restaurant and them telling the story, and then the actual scenes, of living it out and things like that. It does feel very Billy Crystal looking back at it, but it was very well done. It was just well executed.
It's got a nice arc to it.
Yeah.
My problem early on was there didn't seem to be conflict, and I was enjoying it, but I was a little bit bored at the same time. I was like, where is this going? And then...
But Billy Crystal always establishes the movie, gets it going for you before he's going to introduce the conflict.
The whole thing in Paris could have been its own movie.
Yeah.
And the fact that it wasn't, the fact that, that's just Act 1.
Yeah.
And here's further complication, and complication enriched it and made it about something other than the meet cute, and was funny. And as I mentioned before, this is a very witty movie.
Yeah.
I laughed a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I thought it was great structuring wise, like as each different couple arrives at the restaurant, they kind of
start
did you
tell them
about this
part? Yeah.
Yeah. That was, it just kept the whole thing
and
going.
And it's a good group. I like those actors. And
then at the end, they bring in the total stranger.
Yeah, the total stranger that shows up about the Knicks game.
Yep.
And then the Knicks lost.
Billy Crystal actually grew up with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh, really?
That's why they used that part of it as the plot. But I mentioned to Nate, I had one little piece of trivia for him. This one won an award.
Oh, what did it win?
Do you have any guesses as to what this might have won?
Some kind of funny award.
No. This won the Silver Ribbon Award for Best Male Dubbing.
Okay. There's a story there.
But yeah, I thought when I read that, I thought that was pretty entertaining.
Is this for like a foreign release, or do you know anything more about this?
No, it doesn't say. It doesn't. IMDb doesn't provide any more information about that. It was to Luca Biagini for the voice of Billy Crystal.
Yeah, it's got to be one of those.
Oh, it's the Italian National Syndicate of Film Journalists is the body that awarded this award.
That's funny that exists.
I'm just curious. Would you guess this was a commercial success?
You know what? I looked, so I'm gonna cheat. It was not. It made about like 150% what it cost to make, something like that. Like it was maybe a modest success, but if you factor in,
so I'm seeing that it has a 5.8, had a $5.8 million opening weekend domestically and grossed $33 million.
Off like a $22 million budget.
I'm not actually seeing the budget in what I was looking at. Yeah, what I'm looking at doesn't provide me the budget numbers. Where did you find the budget?
Wikipedia. Wikipedia says $21 million budget, $33 million at the box office. You add an advertisement, that's got to be around a break-even point, I would think.
Yeah.
Maybe not so bad in the 90s. Maybe advertising didn't cost so much. But I would think that this movie just seems like something that would have been rented back in the rental days.
Yeah.
It's a safe bet rental.
Well, I think it probably would have made sufficient money because, like you said, it's a movie that would have been rented quite a bit, and then its cable syndication.
Yeah, it was in rotation a lot.
Yeah. So I think it probably had to have made the studio a sufficient amount of money, but I mean, as long as it breaks even in the box office.
And it wouldn't have been, and $21 million is not an expensive movie to make. I mean, there's no giant set pieces in this movie. I mean, they have to go to Paris.
Well, and they have all the NBA stars.
And they have the NBA stars.
Who make very brief cameos.
I would imagine most of those were more or less improvised.
To some extent.
And they probably, just like Billy Crystal is going to take 20 minutes at the beginning of the game, and he's just going to do some stick.
Yeah.
And
all you got to do is throw a camera or two on the court.
I'll bet there's a lot of extra footage, because there's really not that much. There's kind of a montage sequence is what most of that is.
Yeah.
But I bet there's a lot of stuff that was left on the cutting room floor, which maybe one day will end up on YouTube.
That would be entertaining. Kind of a unique credit in this film, and I guess you might be aware of this. There is a credit in the film for the lighting of the Eiffel Tower. Have you ever heard of that before?
Well, I know that it lights up.
Well, apparently, Paris officials require you to credit lighting of the Eiffel Tower in order to allow the Eiffel Tower to be shown in a film.
Okay.
So that's a credit that's there.
That's
I'm assuming
unique.
that there must be a bunch of movies that have that credit as a result. But yeah.
Superman 2.
But yeah, I mean, any other main thoughts or anything else in particular that stands out about this film?
No, I mean it was fun. It, as I've said multiple times, funnier than the average film.
Yeah.
It was just pleasant. There's not obviously it says a lot about relationships.
Yeah.
But most of it, like it's a good film, but it's not a super deep film. Like there's not a lot to plummet. It's pretty much all there on the surface. You kind of get what it's about. It does a good job. I was going to ask you though about what you thought of the chemistry between Billy Crystal and Deborah Winger. Did you think that worked?
For the most part, yeah. It didn't have to be overly strong for what this film was. I mean, this was no When Harry Met Sally. This is no When Harry Met Sally, but for what this film is, I thought it worked relatively well enough.
It was adequate, but not great.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it entirely worked.
Well, did you know after this, Deborah Winger takes herself out of rotation as far as leads, and she didn't take a lead acting role for another 6 years after this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, they both did a fine job. Crystal is more natural, obviously. Winger's given it a very valiant effort, and she's good in it, but I just didn't feel it fully clicked between them.
Well, and this is kind of a tangent, but funny side story. Her father in the film, William Hickey Arthur, that little shtick that he does, that has been a long-running gag in my family, and I actually forgot what movie it even came from.
Oh, really?
But around my parents' house, a lot of times somebody will just walk around and go, "You asked for it? You got it. Toyota." We'll just do that randomly around my parents' house. And like I said, I totally spaced out what movie that came from.
There's a number of faces in this and bits parts that the names don't immediately come to mind. In this case, it was William Hickey. And you see him, and you're like, oh, it's the guy that set the tree on fire in Christmas Vacation.
Yeah. I'm curious if you recall off the top of your head, how many characters in this movie play characters in The Simpsons?
Well, Julie Kevner?
Yeah.
I'm getting the name wrong.
Julie Kavner.
Kavner, yeah. I recognized the name. It took a little bit for me to put the name in the face, but she said some line. I was like, oh, Marge.
Yep, yeah. Did you catch any of the others? Joe Montaigne, yeah.
The Fat Tony.
Yeah, and then Dan Castellaneta also does a character on The Simpsons.
Who was Matt in this movie? Ron Howard's brother was in it as the exterminator.
Oh, yeah.
For the bird scene, the pigeon scene. It's one of those pigeon on your face kind of day. That was a pretty good comic
Rush
bit.
Limbaugh's
Rush Limbaugh, weird kind of cameo appearance when he wasn't quite as divisive, I guess, in 95, maybe. Dan Castellaneta is the man driving the Subaru.
Castellaneta, yeah. That's who he was the guy driving the Subaru. Mm-hmm. No wonder I couldn't find him.
Yeah. Well, it says he's uncredited.
Yeah. Well, that's what I meant, like if he's uncredited. That was also a pretty funny scene when he's losing it and they're test driving the Subaru. Yeah, this has a lot of really funny moments. Yeah,
a little. I mean, they're just kind of. It gives a framework to take these little moments.
Yeah.
And kind of patch them together that are just kind of funny little.
It's a series of bits that.
Yeah, bits.
Billy Crystal just wanted to weave together, and
that could have been
elusive.
Yeah.
A plot to be able to tie together.
And I wonder how long some of these have been kind of germinating.
I don't know.
And it's like, oh, this is the movie where I can do the run the sperm to the sperm bank scene.
Yeah. Which was also hilarious.
Which was funny, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you very consistently laugh at this, but you kind of mentioned, like, you saw this, or in clips, you saw clips of this on TBS and TNT. Mm-hmm. This is also one of those movies that reminds you of, like, that TNT instant classic type of film, you know, and you can see why it would be considered an instant classic and why it could have been played on repeat on cable for a number of years. You kind of miss that nowadays. Well, I guess neither one of us is really watching TNT or TBS anymore, but maybe they are doing it and we're missing it. But yeah, that's kind of the ilk of what this reminds me of. But yeah,
I also love that the opening sequence. The lady at the organ.
Oh yeah.
And then she's playing the organ
And then
at the
it comes in
basketball
really
game,
loud.
and it's just kind of like, what is this?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and that really is a great little kind of tone setter, because really that's kind of what the movie is. It's kind of a big misdirect of a thing.
Yeah.
You think it's just going to be the meet cute, and then it's like, this is the stuff that happens after the happily ever after, and the give and take of a marriage relationship.
Yeah.
I'd definitely watch this one again.
What would you rate this film?
I'd give it 3 stars.
Yeah.
And I was kind of fluctuating throughout the film. I mean, early on, I'm like, I don't know. And then it just kind of got richer and more, and, enjoyable. And I was able to add some heft, something to anchor the gags together,
Yeah.
which I felt like the first 20, 30 minutes didn't have. And I was kind of grasping for something. But yeah, I'd 3-star this thing, probably give it 7 out of 10.
Yeah. I think we're pretty much in the same camp on this, which puts us pretty close to the IMDb rating, which is 6.5 stars. But yeah, so we're just slightly better than think it's, a slightly higher opinion than those on IMDb. But
It's
an
its
easy,
Rotten
likable
Tomatoes
film.
score was actually only about 50%.
Really,
Yeah.
that kind of surprises me. It seems to me like Rotten Tomatoes is more hit and miss than IMDb on the ratings, but that could be a fluke.
And this might also be one that when it came out in the mid 90s, people are, I've seen this.
Yeah.
And that maybe in retrospect, on revisiting, I mean, we're doing a 25th anniversary recording.
I didn't even
and we
think
didn't
of
even
that.
think about that.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, it's quite likable.
Yeah. I wonder if this will have any play this year. Well, it's going to be hard to predict.
It's hard
with
to predict.
the theaters being what they
Yeah.
are right now. So
We need to bring something in. What do we got that we can say is an anniversary showing?
yeah. Well, actually, I don't know if you've heard this, but Megaplex is doing a thing where you can rent out for a private screening. So when they started allowing people back in, the group size was 20. So you can contact Megaplex and rent out a theater and bring in 20 people, and they provide either a movie that was in the theaters when they shut down or a classic movie, and 20 large drinks and 20 large popcorns, all for a set price. And you can just bring in your group, and then they sanitize the theater afterwards. And this might be a fun one to get in the theater. So, yeah. Anyways, any other closing thoughts on this film?
No.
Cool. Well, I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
And we will see you back next week for another Billy Crystal film.
Your name is Rob.
It's a good thing you reminded me. I'm Rob.
And I'm Ezekiel.
And I'm Ezekiel, is that what you said?
Yeah.
quick 20 minutes. With editing, that'll be a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a fun film. Not a lot to say, but it was fun.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of a thought I had early on. It's like, we may have to just talk about just other things we've been watching after we're done with this, because I don't know if I'm going to have that much to say about it.
Yeah.
There's a certain subcategory of films that are just, I haven't come up with a great word to describe them, but they're all on the surface. They're like, it's all there. Like, you don't have to plumb it down. It's just there.
Yeah.
It told you what it wanted to communicate. The one that comes to mind was from forever ago was Flight 93.
Oh yeah.
Like, I watched it and I'm like, that is what it is. It's like I don't have anything to add.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's probably the first time Flight 93 and Forget Paris has been compared.
It's not even September either.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah.